Every nation has a mythic hero that it clings to come hell or high water. The American cowboy is ours. With his mile-wide supply of independence, fearlessness, and integrity, the cowboy has helped define Americans to themselves for over 100 years. Real Old West cowboys were young, low-paid, and overworked rural laborers, tending the livestock of well-to-do cattle barons and investors of venture capital from back east in Europe. But the cowboy of the movies and popular fiction has been something else. A full-time adventurer and bringer of justice with his strength of character, his ingenuity, and his six guns. Take a recent Hollywood Western that relives the cowboy myth, Kevin Costner's Open Range, made in 2003. Costner and trail boss Robert Duvall are driving cattle across what they take to be open range, where the grass and water are free and keep their cattle in good shape for market. A local rancher and bad guy, played by Michael Gambon, takes exception and sends his henchmen to terrorize them. In short order, a third cowboy gets killed, and their dog. Thus begins what eventually becomes a bloodbath as Duvall and Costner, though they are outnumbered at least 10-1, clean up the town in a long, furious gun battle. Mission accomplished. The moral of the story, as with nearly every Western, is that there are evil men in the world who tyrannize innocent, law-abiding folks, and there are men whose job is to stop them, with guns if necessary, and guns are usually necessary. It may be hard to believe that the tales of cowboys with six-shooters maintaining law and order on the American frontier have anything to do with modern-day foreign policy set in Washington, but they do. Far more than we realize. Under the influence of the way we remember the West, we have sent our armies halfway around the world to change or prop up regimes and defeat the enemies of the American way. Remember how we got into Iraq? There was this bad guy, Saddam, and no doubt about it, the man qualified as bad to the bone. And there was a belief that he was about to wreak havoc internationally with weapons of mass destruction, as he'd already done with the Kurds in his own country and the Iranians whose country he'd tried to invade in the 1980s. And let's not forget Kuwait. Well, it turns out that, bad as he was, a dictator of the worst kind, there were no weapons of mass destruction, so we were wrong about that. But we did drive a brutal dictator from power. And after a shock and awe shootout that lighted up the night skies over Baghdad and TV screens around the world, courtesy of CNN, Americans were ready for the quick Hollywood ending. Our heroes ride off, mostly unscratched, into the sunset, the grateful townsfolk waving as they go. Music rises, the end, credits roll. Alas, there was this other thing we got instead. What Defense Secretary Rumsfeld predicted would be a long, hard slog. Whatever folks may think of the way Rumsfeld managed our continued military presence in Iraq, he was right about two things. It's been long and it's been hard. It's also been easy to point the finger of blame. But one thing is becoming clear. There are not enough of us ready to accept our share of the blame for the whole sorry mess that became for a while an insurgency and evolved into a civil war, from which there has so far been no exit. Iraq got most of us still believing the Hollywood Western myth about ridding the frontier of bad men and restoring law and order. But any one of us who thought that same myth was good enough for the Middle East should have had their head examined. We were delusional, and current events have proven it. A simple corrective before hauling out the guns and heading into town for the big shootout would have been a knowledge of Middle Eastern history. There are about 3,000 years of it, and we might have at least questioned whether our 125-year-old myth about justice on the American frontier actually applies over there. So Americans are now impatient with the course of the war and unsatisfied with the results. Big surprise. We suckered ourselves into this one, thinking that superior firepower and know-how would put the bad guys out and the good guys in, and without a lot of collateral damage or heavy losses. Events have shown that it's time to let go of that myth and come up with a better one that serves ourselves and a world still desperately in need of justice, law, and order. We have not been big fans of the United Nations, but in retrospect, the support of that body might have prevented us from acting on a faulty national myth instead of a more workable international one, a shared myth about the possibility of global peace, justice, and prosperity. Through the efforts of its combined membership, law-abiding nations can actually work together to exert some leverage against the world's bad guys, including terrorists. We need to stop rushing in with guns blazing, believing it's the quickest way to solve international problems. And we can begin by doing one thing that would be a step in the right direction. we can once and for all lay to rest the shoot-'em-up Hollywood Western, put it in a cheap pine coffin, and plant it once and for all on Boot Hill, and let the cowboy go back to what he does best, herding cattle.